Personal finance or money management is something that we all are curious about, even though it is mostly not publicly discussed. We all wish to see through how others manage with their money. We all wish to assess whether our approach with money management is right or not. We all aspire to do best with our money management and look for whatever knowledge is available. Ironically, that knowledge of personal finance, though easily available on internet, is not relevant to the reality of an average Indian. And hence, we end up learning personal finance lessons from global experiences that are often misleading in the Indian context. You are watching Track to Reality and I am Ravi Sinha. The very subject of personal finance is at a nascent stage in India. Traditionally, Indians are not known to discuss money or wealth as openly as in other globally matured economies. Financial education has never been part of our education system either. Flaunting wealth or publicly discussing it has been culturally discouraged in the country. Indians don't easily rely on the personal finance advisors either, and there are many reasons behind that. It could be lack of awareness, cost involved with customized solutions, lack of trust, and other cultural reasons. But then, the quest for gaining knowledge on personal finance is such that it ranks at the top of list of most searched items on internet. This clearly indicates a disconnect, as most of the personal finance advice on internet is sourced from global markets, their experiences, and their money behavior. It's true that the subject of personal finance is very much evolved in matured global markets, but those globally accepted theories are not necessarily in sync with the Indian reality. India is a different market altogether and needs its own set of personal finance solutions that are relevant to the Indian economy and society at large. Most of the globally well accepted personal finance advices are relevant for other global economies, and following those advices blindly could land you, an average Indian, into a financial mess. Let's examine the most widely accepted global concepts of personal finance and see whether or not these are relevant to the Indians. Net worth invested in house. Globally, the personal finance advice is that the share of house in your net worth should not be more than one third. But how is that possible in India? No decent house in any of the top tier cities of India is available below 1 crore today. Now, to have only 30% share of your net worth in your primary house of residence, it simply means you can buy a house only if you have a net worth of 3 crore rupees. How many Indians would qualify with this purchase power? Hardly the top 2-3%. Even if you have generational wealth, you would qualify with this personal finance rule to own a house. Housing loan as leverage. Housing loan is often referred as leverage in matured economies. But then in most of those countries, the rental returns are higher than the borrowing cost. Arbitrage is in favor of the home loan borrower. So if you can afford a down payment of 15 to 20% and put that house on rent, then practically your tenant pays for your house. This is not relevant in India. Here, the gap between home loan borrowing cost and rental return is no less than 500 basis points or 5%. Added to that, other home ownership cost is way too high in India, with very heavy tax burden of GST and stamp duty is also there. Now, house price only 5 years of gross income. Globally, one should buy a given house only if it costs 5 years of your gross income. Ironically, in terms of price to income ratio, the track record of Indian housing is worst in the world. The average cost of a house in top tier cities of India is 11 years of gross income, with some cities touching up to 40 years. Finding a house worth 5 years of gross income is an impractical personal finance advice in India. Net worth invested in a stock market. How much percentage of your net worth should be invested in a stock market? Globally, personal finance advice is to use Rule 100, which means divide your age by 100 and put that much money into a stock market. Simply put, it means a 40 years old person should have 60% of net worth in a stock market, and a 60 years old person should have 40% wealth in stocks. But in those countries, only risk factor with a stock investment is market volatility. That unfortunately does not hold true in a country like India, where the stock market is not just subject to sentiment driven volatility, but also scams and market manipulations. Every now and then there are reports of stock market manipulations and dicey transactions. Even after so many stock market scams, we are still learning, and any Hindenburg report or Jen Street scam has the potential to make you go broke overnight. A 60 years old person on the verge of retirement in India can't be adventurous to put 40% wealth in the stock market. 25x retirement corpus. Retirement corpus is advised by personal finance experts to be 25 times of your annual expenses on the day you are retiring. That again is not relevant for a country like India, where people generally retire or are forced to retire latest by 58 or 60 years. It's a prudent advice in those economies where people generally work up to 67 years. Medical costs are covered, and one is also backed up by the government social security. Retirement corpus is not the only means of survival. In India, there is no social security. Medical expenses are witness to hyperinflation, and retirement corpus can mostly be parked in safe instruments like bank fixed deposits only. Retirement withdrawal rules. 4% withdrawal rule is a generic advice of personal finance in Western countries, where the returns are low and inflation is also low. In India, one needs to have a really large corpus to be able to survive with only 4% withdrawal of your interest or investment returns. Retirement withdrawal in India is subject to many factors, including returns, one's risk-taking ability with retirement corpus, and family support. Emergency Fund 6x. Emergency fund is no doubt necessary in today's uncertain world and even more uncertain job market. But the question is, how much should one have as a safety net? Personal finance advice that I find all around is 6 months of your salary or expenses as a corpus of emergency fund. That is relevant only in those economies where getting re-employed is easy. One can at least be assured of underemployment or part-time jobs if not getting a job as per the qualifications. This is not necessarily relevant in a country like India, where once one loses a job, one can struggle for a year or two to get another job. That brings the most relevant question to the table. What is the right fit personal finance advice in the Indian context? Though money management is personal and no one size fits all answer is relevant to everyone, what could be vouchsafed is that on a macro level, the asset allocation in Indian context is best to have a 40-40-20 approach. 40% in property, 40% in financial products, and 20% in gold and other assets. One can reduce exposure to capital markets post the retirement and go for a more safe asset like the bank fixed deposit. More importantly, one should not aspire to buy a house before having a decent net worth. Home loans should be used as a leverage and not liability. It simply means borrow a home loan at 8% only for the amount that you already have, and then use your money to earn a higher interest at 12 to 14%. If you don't have net worth, don't fall into the trap of home loan that costs far more than the property appreciation. Renting is a much better and financially safer advice in India. With a home loan without net worth, there also hangs the uncertainty of financial emergency, where house as an asset class actually does not have asset quality to bail you out. Emergency fund should be no less than 2 years of your expenses, whether parked as fixed deposit or in gold that can be easily liquidated as and when needed. Your retirement corpus should also be subject to your age of retirement, but no less than 35 years of annual expense. Keeping in mind the increase in average lifespan, India's high inflation, and hyperinflation of healthcare cost. Is this an ideal solution? Is this a solution that is universally relevant to all Indians? Unfortunately, no. But then, these solutions are closer to the reality of an average Indian who is often tempted by the half-baked information about the global benchmarks of personal finance that has little to no relevance in the Indian context. Since all the available content about personal finance in the market is very generic and target audience is global, where realities are different from India, I have tried to decode the subject for the Indian audience. Hope you find it useful. Feel free to comment and give your feedback for more of such informative videos. Thanks for watching.